never meant to stay in that barn more than one night. I was hurt, lost, just trying to get out of the storm. Then he walked in barefoot, quiet, too good for the mess I was. Micah. He wasn't supposed to talk to me, wasn't even supposed to see me, but he did. And what started in silence turned into something we couldn't undo. I thought I was hiding from the world, but instead, I found someone who made me want to be seen. Let me take you back to where it all began. It was the kind of storm that shook the bones of the earth. The sky cracked with thunder. The wind howled like it had a voice of its own. And the rain came down, thick and heavy, like wet cloth. I'd been walking for hours, maybe more. My shoulder was on fire from a fall 2 nights before. My shoes were soaked, blood crusted at the cuffs of my jeans. Every step felt like a punishment. My body begged me to stop, but something deep inside, some small, stubborn spark, kept pushing me forward. I stumbled through field after field, dark shapes rising and falling like ghosts. Fences, distant barns, maybe houses. I didn't know where I was. Somewhere in Pennsylvania, I guessed. Maybe Lancaster County. The map I'd kept in my coat was long gone, lost in a fall down a muddy slope near the rail yard. I wasn't looking for help, didn't want kindness. I just needed shelter. For walls, a roof, a dry place to fall apart. Then I saw it. A barn in the distance, barely visible through the storm. For a second I thought I was hallucinating. But then lightning lit it up again. It was real, old, Amish style. No lights, no cars, just stillness. I limped toward it like a man gasping for breath. The side door creaked when I pushed it open. Unlocked. That alone felt like a miracle. Inside it was dry. The air smelled of hay and damp wood. I pressed my back to the wall, heart hammering, eyes adjusting. It was quiet, almost holy. Then my legs gave out. I collapsed into a pile of old blankets and burlap sacks. I must have drifted in and out of sleep for hours. The storm outside faded, but the pain in my shoulder kept building. Blood had soaked through the makeshift bandage I'd torn from my shirt. I was burning up, half awake, half delirious, until I heard it, a footstep, soft, careful, crunching through hay. I opened my eyes and squinted. He was standing just inside the barn doors, framed by the last bit of moonlight. A bucket in one hand, a small cloth bundle in the other. Young, maybe 19. Thin, but he carried himself like he was taller. He wore simple clothes. Loose pants, suspenders, a linen shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. His face was partly in shadow. Not movie star handsome, but untouched. Eyes too wide for his face, framed by dark lashes. Hair the color of rain-soaked wheat. He didn't look like he belonged in this time. For a second, I forgot I was in pain. He stared at me like I might vanish if he blinked. I didn't say a word, and neither did he. He stepped closer, silent as breath. He set the bucket down by the wall. Then the cloth-wrapped bundle, tied with string, he placed gently beside me. Inside food, bread, a boiled egg, apple slices wrapped in a napkin. A soft scent drifted up, like rosewater. It smelled like a memory. "You don't have to," I croaked. My voice was dry, rough, like gravel in my throat. He raised a finger to his lips. A quiet hush, then turned to leave. Wait, I didn't say it out loud, but I felt it, so hard it could have cracked the air. My heart thundered in my chest, beating like a warning drum. I wasn't ready for him to disappear. At the door he paused. One hand rested on the wooden frame. Then slowly he slid the latch closed. Locked it. From the inside, both of us sealed in. I don't know why, but that small act felt like something sacred. Like permission. Maybe it was the ease in his movements. The calm. The complete absence of fear. Or judgment. He walked back to me and crouched low. His eyes moved over me, searching, until they landed on my shoulder. The bandage. His brow furrowed. He flinched just slightly, like he could feel the pain himself. Still, he didn't speak. His hands moved carefully, quiet as breath. He began to unwrap the cloth. No questions, no hesitation. The wound had reopened, He didn't flinch at the blood. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small vial. He dipped the cloth into the liquid, maybe oil, maybe tincture, and pressed it gently to the gash. It stung. I grunted but didn't pull away. The way he focused, lips pressed tight, breath steady, made something ache in my chest. A kind of ache I didn't understand. I tried to speak again. Who? But he looked up sharply and shook his head once. Don't. That's what his eyes said. And I listened. We stayed like that for a while. Him kneeling beside me in silence. Me watching the slow rhythm of his breath, the grace in his hands. He smelled faintly of wood smoke and milk. He didn't just look innocent. He felt untouched, like the world hadn't scarred him yet. But still, his eyes held something heavy, like he was carrying a secret too big to name. Eventually, he stood. His bare feet didn't make a sound. He crossed the barn and struck a single match, lighting an old lantern. Warm amber light flickered to life, chasing the shadows away. That's when I saw him, really saw him. And he saw me. We just stared for a moment. My face must have told 100 stories I didn't have the strength to explain. His gave nothing away. But he didn't look away either. The space between us felt full, charged with something neither of us could name. I reached for the bread he'd left, broke it in half, maybe out of habit, maybe something deeper. I held one piece out to him. He hesitated, then took it. And we sat like that, in the stillness, in the flickering light, with the scent of hay, rain, and something sacred between us. I chewed slowly. My mouth was dry, but I was grateful. He didn't eat much, just watched me, cross-legged, hands folded in his lap. After a while, he stood again. This time, he moved to the far corner of the barn, where a tattered quilt was folded over old crates. He brought it over and laid it across my legs without saying a word. This boy, I thought, is either the purest soul I've ever met, or the loneliest. He turned toward the door again, and I felt something tighten in my chest. You don't have to stay, I said quietly. But I won't tell anyone. He didn't answer right away, just turned to face me, met my eyes, and after all that silence, he finally spoke. His voice was softer than I expected, like a hymn whispered in the dark. You can stay, he said, then after a pause added, but no one can know. And with that, he opened the barn door just enough to slip outside, vanishing into the silver mist like a ghost, leaving behind only warmth and the echo of words I never expected to hear. But no one can know. It was only the beginning. He came every morning just after sunrise. The barn door would creak open, and he'd slip inside, quiet, barefoot, always carrying something. A tin cup of water, a strip of cloth, a boiled egg, once even a small jar of salve that smelled faintly of pine and vinegar. He didn't speak much, not at first, just placed the things beside me, gave a brief glance, then turned to go. And I began to look forward to those glances more than I wanted to admit. Micah, that's what I started calling him in my head. I didn't know his real name yet, but Micah felt right, biblical, clean, soft around the edges. He had the quiet, careful hands of someone raised to fix things, with very few tools. His presence didn't. He didn't demand space. His presence just was, like it had always been there. By the third day, I could sit upright without clenching my jaw. The fever had broken. My arms still ached, but the swelling had gone down. I watched him as he moved around the barn, stacking old feed sacks, checking the seams near the windows, picking at loose hay like he needed an excuse to stay. Something unspoken was growing between us. Not quite tension, more like potential. Like static before a lightning strike. Micah, I said one morning, testing the name out loud. He turned fast, startled. Just as I sat up straighter, my chest tightening as he entered. He set the food down quickly and turned to leave. But I stopped him. You're avoiding me, I said gently. Not accusing, just noticing. I shouldn't be here, he answered, still facing away. Then why are you? He hesitated. I stood slowly, carefully. Every muscle in my body protested, but I crossed the space between us anyway. He didn't back away, but he wouldn't meet my eyes either. "I don't think you're afraid of me," I said. Micah flinched, like I'd touched something raw. "You're afraid of what I might make you feel." He looked up then. And God, the things in that gaze. Terror, hunger, defiance, hope. It was like watching someone stand on the edge of a cliff, wind in their hair, unsure if they were about to fly or fall. He opened his mouth, closed it, then finally said, "You shouldn't say things like that." "Why?" I asked. "Because they're true," he whispered. "Because they're dangerous." I reached up, slowly, and cupped his cheek. He didn't move, didn't flinch, just stood there, breathing softly through parted lips, his skin warm beneath my hand. "I don't want to hurt you," I said. "You already are." Those words landed harder than I expected. He stepped back, leaving me standing there in the half-dark. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning he came again earlier than usual. He didn't say a word, just set a cup of tea beside me and sat across from me in silence. But something had shifted. The air between us didn't just feel heavy. It crackled. Finally, Micah spoke. "I was 14 the first time it happened." I blinked, unsure what he meant. "I noticed the other boys," he said quietly, "out in the fields, working shirtless, laughing." He paused, their backs tanned, sweaty. I couldn't stop looking. I said nothing. "I thought it was the devil," he continued. "Thought I was broken. That if I prayed hard enough, it would stop." "And did it?" I asked. He shook his head. "No, it just buried itself deeper." I wanted to reach for his hand, to close that distance. But I didn't. Not yet. That night, I lay awake, watching stars slip through the barn's wooden slats, wondering how long we could keep starving the truth, before it devoured us both. And I knew this wasn't the end. The rain came back like a memory, soft at first, barely a whisper on the barn's sloped roof, then, heavier now, steady, a rhythm that filled the barn like breath. I lay on the pallet Micah had built from old hay and folded blankets, eyes tracing the rafters overhead, counting slow leaks where water slipped through the beams. Each drop caught the lantern light, then vanished. He was late. By now, I should have heard the latch click. I strained to catch the sound of bare feet on old wood. But tonight, there was nothing. Just the wind and the rain. I'd almost convinced myself he wasn't coming when the door creaked open and that familiar silhouette stepped inside. His shoulders were damp, curls slicked flat across his forehead. But he looked different. Not in how he appeared, in how he felt. Like something inside him had shifted. He moved with a kind of stiffness, not anger, but hesitation, laced with something close to resolve. "You're soaked," I said, sitting up. He didn't answer right away, just secured the door behind him, slow and quiet, then shrugged. Didn't want to wait. I didn't ask what he meant. Micah crossed the barn slowly, holding a small tin kettle wrapped in cloth. Steam curled from its spout. He set it between us and lit the lantern. Warm amber light spilled across the floor, pushing the shadows back. No food tonight. No explanation for his silence. He didn't offer words. Just sat beside me, back against the barn door, arms draped loosely over bent knees. Outside, the fields shimmered silver. Rain fell in clean, steady lines, blurring the horizon, washing the world into mist. The barn felt like an island. "I used to preach," I said at last, my voice low. "Or at least pretend I could." Micah turned his head, looking at me sideways. I'd stand in front of rows of folding chairs, Bible open, talking about grace, about love, while hiding who I was, what I felt. I exhaled slowly, pressing my palm flat to the floor. You can only carry that kind of life for so long. He didn't speak, but he didn't look away either. "I lost everything," I said. "My ordination, my reputation, my home, all for one." "One what?" he asked softly. "Mistake." I gave a short, bitter laugh. "I fell in love with someone I wasn't supposed to." Micah's jaw tightened. His gaze drifted to the far corner of the barn. like truth was easier to hear when you didn't look it in the eye. It wasn't a scandal until someone found out, I said. Until they saw us together. And even then, I added, it wasn't the broken vows they hated most. It was that I loved a man. Micah flinched, not from disgust but recognition, like the word itself had teeth. I was shunned, I said. Not officially, but in practice. My phone stopped ringing. Friends stopped coming by. My landlord gave me 30 days to leave. Micah sat very still beside me. Rain slid down the boards behind him. What happened to him? He asked quietly. Gone, I said. He left before I could ask him to stay. A silence stretched between us, tight as a pulled thread. I don't regret love, I added, but I regret letting it turn me into someone afraid to be seen. That made him look at me, and in his eyes, I saw it. He understood. I've never told anyone, Micah said, so quietly I almost missed it. Told what? I asked. He didn't answer, just reached forward, touched the kettle, then pulled his hand back, like the warmth had burned him. In the community, he paused, swallowing hard. You're either one thing or the other. There's no space between. He tilted his head back and rested it against the barn wall. His throat moved once. His lashes were damp, not from tears, but from humidity. Or maybe just the weight of the moment. In the community, he said again, slower this time, I wasn't seen. Not really. I was watched, but never seen. Something tightened in my chest. Not from pain, from recognition. When I was 16, he continued, I helped Eli Troyer load hay out in the back field. He gave a small, crooked smile, like the memory hurt and soothed at the same time. It was hot. He took off his shirt, and I remember, I couldn't stop looking, but I couldn't let him see me look, either. So I stared at the ground, at the barn, anywhere else. Micah looked at me then, eyes wide, exhausted. I prayed every night after that, he whispered. Begged God to take the sin out of me, but it didn't go away. It just got quieter. The rain softened, melting into a misty rhythm against the roof. I looked at his hands, curled tight in his lap. He didn't know what to do with them, but I did. I reached across the space between us, slow, deliberate, and let my fingers brush against his. Just a touch. Nothing more. He looked down, startled. Even though I'd moved slowly enough to give him time, I didn't push. Micah didn't move, but he didn't pull away either. We stayed like that, side by side, bodies close but not touching, except for that faint connection. My hand beside his, our fingers barely grazing. He let it last 10 seconds. Then gently he pulled away, not like it hurt, not like he didn't want it, just afraid. He curled his hands into fists again, staring out at the field where fog drifted across the grass, dancing like ghosts. I didn't chase the touch. I didn't need to. He'd stayed longer tonight than ever before. And for now, that was enough. The storm came like grief, quiet at first, then all-consuming. It began with, the wind hit hard, rattling the boards, lifting dust from the rafters, turning the barn into something alive, a breathing, groaning thing. Thunder rolled in low, endless waves. Rain pounded the roof like fists, but it wasn't the storm outside that broke me open. It was the one inside. I don't even remember what triggered it. The thought, a memory, some quiet, unremarkable thread. Once pulled, it unraveled everything. One minute I was sitting on the pallet, trying to read an old, crumpled map by lamplight. The next, couldn't breathe. My chest locked up. My throat closed. My hands shook, reaching for something, anything to hold on to. But there was nothing. Just the sound of wind and wood groaning overhead, and the soft, steady drip of water from the eaves. The weight of everything I'd lost curled inside me like sickness. I didn't mean to cry. It wasn't a decision. It was collapse. I dropped my head into my hands and let it happen. Years of shame, silence, exile, grief buried deep beneath survival. It tore through me like lightning splitting an old tree. The barn door creaked open. I didn't look up. I didn't want him to see me like that. It ruined the softness, me weeping like a child in the dark. But Micah didn't speak. He crossed the floor quietly, each step steady and sure, and sat beside me. I felt the warmth of him before I saw him. Then his hand, gentle, unsure, settled on my back. It wasn't a claiming touch. It wasn't a question. It was just there, just human. I pressed my palm to my face, trying to stop the tears, but they kept coming. Loud, ugly things. The kind I hadn't let myself cry since the day they stripped my name from the church bulletin. Still, Micah said nothing, but his hand moved in slow, steady circles between my shoulders. Present. Soothing. I turned toward him without thinking, like a magnet pulled to the only metal in the room. His eyes met mine. Something passed between us, wordless but undeniable. Then he reached up, thumb brushing the tears from my cheek. I closed my eyes. That's when I felt it. His forehead against mine, the softest pressure. His breath trembled between us. And then his lips, feather-light, question, not a demand. A kiss so careful it could have been mistaken for breath. I didn't move, not at first. It was too much, too gentle, too good. When he pulled away, his eyes were wide, not afraid of me, afraid of himself, of what he'd done, of what it meant. He started voice cracking. I shouldn't have, but I leaned forward, just enough to stop the spiral. You didn't do anything wrong, I whispered. Not to me. Still Micah stood, abrupt, crossed the barn in 5 silent strides, curled into the far corner, knees drawn tight to his chest. I didn't follow. I let him breathe. The storm held louder now, thunder crashing like an accusation. I watched his silhouette, shaking not from cold, from something deeper. A boy torn between what he wanted and what he'd been taught to fear. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time felt meaningless. Then he stood, crossed back to me. Knees met the floor with a soft thud. And he said, maybe it's wrong to them. His eyes searched mine. Vet, unsure. Begging, not for forgiveness, but for clarity.